It was a bright, sunny afternoon, and the heat was almost unbearable. The Demon Slayer trainees had been training tirelessly non-stop since the morning. Each training session with the Hashira was a grueling challenge, pushing their physical and mental limits beyond imagination. And now, here they were, panting and sweating, sitting in a straight line on the ground. Some of their legs crossed and others in a shinza, their expression a mix of exhaustion and anticipation. Amidst them, you recognized a few familiar faces, but also some new ones who had joined the ranks in recent days. Amongst them was Tanjiro, who looked as determined as ever despite the immense training he's been through. To recap, Kayaka had enlisted strict training sessions for the young demon slayers, including the Hashira. The demons had halted in their attacks, creating an eerie calm that everyone knew wasn't going to last long. The entire demon slaying course knew Muzanki Butsuji and his 12 Kizuki were just biding their time, plotting. So, what better way than to take this moment of opportunity to hone their skills and training? You actually weren't expecting to participate in their training session, considering you weren't really a Hashira, despite having already been the title of the Yoniaka of the demon slaying course. I butchered that. But you agreed to do anyways, wanting to help keep your moral high and your wits sharp. However, unlike your Hashira brothers and sisters, you opted for a much more different approach. You had opted to integrate a little game as a unique form of mental training, and meant to sharpen the young trainees' wits and courage, tactic training. As your unwitting instructor, you took a moment to observe the ground, the sweat glistening on their muscles, and that focus etched on their face reminded you of the immense physical drain they're undergoing. But now it was time to challenge their minds. After all, a little fun and a bit of mental exercise can go a long way in revealing the stress of constant vigilantes and the horrors they've faced. You sat on the egwa of the Butterfly Estate training ground, a gentle breeze playing with the loose strands of your hair. In your arms, you cradled Tayo as he sucked on his bottle of milk, blissfully oblivious to the world around him. "I hope you boys are ready," you announced with a smirk, catching their attention. "Because today we're going to play a little game." Their eyes widened in curiosity, some glancing at one another nervously. You knew that games weren't exactly part of their training routine, but you could care less about the fundamentals. "I know this isn't the part of usual training agenda," you began, "but sometimes the mind needs a different kind of challenge." You glanced at the demon slayers. A collective murmur of surprise rippled through the group, and Tanjiro looked at you with a mix of confusion and curiosity. But Mrs. Rengoku," one of the young slayers spoke, "we're here to train our bodies, but not our minds." "Ah, but the sharpest sword is not always the one that cuts the deepest," you countered with a knowing smile. "A true hero doesn't just use his body for combat, but also his brain as well." You could see the gears turning in their heads as they considered your words. "So here's how this will go," you continued. "I'll ask a riddle, and if you answer correctly, you're safe. If you get it wrong, however..." You trailed off, allowing the tension to build as your lips slowly arched into a devilish grin. And suddenly a burst of cold air filled the training grounds, and each boy shivered as goosebumps arose on their bodies, each quickly wrapping his arms around himself. The shrink contrast of the chilling temperature to the scalding heat outside was jolting. "I'll turn you into human popsicles using my ice breath," you finished, your tone playful yet threatening, and the boy's eyes grew wide with shock. "You're kidding, right? Surely you were just pulling their leg." But as you blew out a breath, a thin wisp of frost curling out of your mouth, they realized you weren't. The thought of being frozen solid was not an appealing one, even if it was temporary. Tanjiro raised his hand. Aniki, why riddles?" He was genuinely curious, yet there was a hint of spectacle in his voice. You looked at him and tilted your head slightly, a smirk playing on your lips. "Why, to keep you on your toes, Tanjiro," you replied, your eyes sparkling with mischief. "Also because I'm bored and watching you all sweat and squirm sounds like a delightful peasant." You inwardly snickered, realizing you sound like a little shinobu. Tanjiro gawked. Who is this woman? What happened to the warm, motherly figure that he had grown fond of? It would have seemed you switched to your Yokiana personality without warning and were just as cold as unwielding as your ice abilities. Now quit our chatter and let's begin. The first riddle was simple, something that even a child could solve, but you could see the sweat forming on the young demon slayers' brows as they pondered for the answer. It was as if they were facing a life or death battle, which, in a way, it kinda was. All right, riddle 1, you announced, the coldness of your voice matching the chilly air that surrounded you. What's as light as a feather, yet the world's heaviest thing to hold when you're down? The young trainees looked at each other, some already sweating bullets. Riddles weren't exactly their forte, and the fear of being turned into ice sculptures added an extra layer to the pressure. Finally, after a pondering and nervous glares, a young demon slayer trainee named, I'm gonna butcher his name, Tachiyachi, tentatively raised his hand. Is it a heart? He answered, his voice quivering slightly. Your eyes lit up with amusement. Very good, Tachiyachi-kun. You reached into your kimono with a free hand and tossed a piece of candy to him. You're safe for now. He caught it clumsily, but his face brightened up, the tension in the air dismissively, intellectually. Wait, you were giving out candy? Okay, suddenly this doesn't seem so bad. All right, riddle 2, you say, your gaze sweeping over the line of trainees, who now looked at you with a mix of excitement and temperation. What belongs to you but your friends and family use it more? The boys squirmed in their spots, raking their brain for answers, and Tanjiro looked particularly thoughtful. His eyes narrowed in concentration. After a moment that stretched into an entirety, a young demon slayer named Mochiyachi raised his hand with a hopeful look. Is it love? He asked somewhat confidently. Your smirk grew wider, and you couldn't help but crackle at the irony. Oh, not quite, you say, shaking your head. He immediately gulped as his face paled, realizing his error. Though I can see what you were coming from. That isn't the answer I'm thinking of. But, since you tried, he paused, I'll spare you. For now. You added, and blew a kiss his way. The gentle wisp of the icy breath kissed his cheek, leaving a trail of frost that made him visibly shake. But blush? Anyone want to answer? Soon, a young demon slayer named Wataru took a deep breath, his hand shakily rising into the air. Generosity? He suggested, his voice quivering. You leaned back with a dramatic sigh, venting disappointment. Sorry, Wataru-kun. Wrong answer. You said. Before anyone could react, you took a deep breath and exhaled a misty cloud of cold air that wrapped around his body, freezing him into a perfect ice sculpture. He screamed for a split second before his voice was silenced. His eyes lined with shock and his body froze in mid-action, and the other slayers gasped, their hearts racing with a mix of fear and panic. He's frozen solid. This can't be happening. They all looked like they wanted to flee. Tanjiro stared, mouth agape. He sweated profusely, his heart pounding like a tayo drum. Did you really just? Before he could finish that thought, you quickly calmed the situation. Don't worry, you said with a sigh. He's not dead, you reassured. You snapped your fingers, and with a crack, the ice crumbled away, revealing the trembling but unharmed Wokiyama. The others visibly relaxed, revealed to see their comrade okay, but their eyes remained wary. Tanjiro released a breath. Relieved. He should have known you wouldn't be that heartless. But you weren't kidding. This was no joke. The correct answer is your name. You revealed, smiling sweetly. Yokimaru, still shaking from the cold, managed a weak chuckle. Thanks for the cool experience, Miss Rengoku. He shivered, rubbing his arms up for warmth. Who would have guessed the wife of the mighty, enthusiastic flame husher would be such a diplomat? The young trainees certainly didn't, but here they were, trembling as they awaited the next riddle. All right, riddle 3, you answered, your voice a scenery contrasting to the tension in the air. What loses its head in the morning but gets it back at night? The boys looked at each other, their brains working overtime. They hadn't signed up for this kind of mental gymnastics, but the promise of not turning into an ice sculpture was a powerful motive. And maybe a piece of candy or two. Tanjiro's eyes darted around, noticing the nervousness in the faces of his comrades. He knew he had to do something to break the tension, so he took a breath and raised his hand. I think I know the answer, he stuttered. You raised an eyebrow, your eyes sparkling with interest. Oh, you do? Do tell, Tanjiro-kun, you urged, your smile never faltering. He took a deep breath, his heart racing. A pillow? He answered. You burst into laughter, a sound that was surprisingly as a chill in the air. A pillow? Oh, Tanjiro, you're too cute, you said. But very good. Tanjiro revealed a breath as he didn't know he was holding, and the other demon slayers couldn't help but chuckle as expression. You tossed a candy over to him, which he caught flawlessly, a revealed smile crossing his lips. And the game continued, each riddle more challenging and bizarre than the last. You watched as the young slayers grew more and more nervous with each wrong answer, the number of ice statues increasing by the minute. Yet, the fear of failure also brought their competitive spirits, as they began to work together, whispering hints and suggestions. Tanjiro sat through it all, though, his mind racing as he tried to debate the answers of your riddles. Despite the chilly air and the occasional shiver, he found a strange comfort in the challenge. It was a distraction from his fears and the weight of his promise to Nezuko. As the game went on, the boys grew bolder, their anxiety slowing, morphing into determination. They whispered amongst themselves, sharing thoughts and theories, each eager to avoid the icy fate of their comrades. Though the conjuration was palatable, a slight contrast to the fear that had once ruled the training ground. Those who answered wrong just accepted their fate with a smile, knowing they did their best. The training grounds were filled with the sounds of crackling ice around the frozen slayers, and soft cooing of your son, who had fallen asleep in your arms, completely unfazed by the icy sculptures that were coming around. Tanjiro resolved only hardened as several of his comrades were turned into human ice sculptures until it was down to him and 4 others. All right, you added, your tone a mix of amusement. Riddle 10. But this one's a bit trickier. They mentally prepare themselves. What can run but never walks? What has a bed but never sleeps? You watch their expression change into serious glances, seeing the gears in their heads turning. It was clear that the fear of becoming ice sculptures was no longer their primary concern, but instead to a desire to endure the win in the game of the overriding their anxiety. Honestly, you felt proud of them for making it this far. They were working together to come up with solutions. This is exactly what they needed to face off against Muzan and his demons. After what felt like an eternity of silence, Tanjiro finally spoke up, his voice steady. A river. Your smile grew wider. Oh, is that your final answer? You gradually stood up, the baby still in your arms. As the chilly air formed, your icy abilities disbanded. The remaining slayers held their breaths, their eyes glued to you. If you want, you can change your guess, you said, tilting your head. I promise I won't freeze you if you get it wrong. Tanjiro's eyes narrowed, aware you were baiting them. One thing he learned from his past experiences to never let enemies get under your skin. Don't always believe it's you hear or see. Sometimes it's a trick of the mind. He took a deep breath, his eyes meeting yours with a firm resolve. No, he stated firmly. My answer is river. You couldn't help but chuckle at the sheer confidence in his voice. You dragged on the silence, watching the other slayers face with a mere mix of hope and fear. You finally nodded. Very well, Tanjiro-kun, you said, your eyes gleaming with approval. You've answered correctly. The remaining boys let out a collective sigh of relief as you released those frozen from their icy prisons, the crackle of ice echoing through the training grounds as they each relaxed. Good job, everyone, you said in a genuine smile, standing up with your now sleeping baby boy in your arms. Your training with me is complete. Remember, it's not just your bodies that you must train, but also your minds as well. You looked at the exhausted and inherited group of demon slayers before you, their faces mixed of revealed and excitement. They had faced a different kind of challenge today, one that didn't involve them swinging a sword, running, or bending over back until their bodies were sharp like pretzels. Instead, it was just filled with riddles, ice, and sweet treats. But do keep in mind, never relate. you added. The calm is only temporarily, and the storm is always brewing. The young demon slayers looked at you with a renewed determination, nodding in understanding. They knew that the true battle was yet to come, and things are only going to get harder from here. Your words served as a somber reminder of what lay ahead. Now go get warm up. I'll prepare some herbal tea so you get treated for hypothermia. You told them sweetly, and remember to always keep your hearts ablaze. You concealed, quoting Kojiro's words. The young demon slayers nodded solemnly, the weight of his phrase retorting within their soul. Those words of Kojiro echoed in the back of Tanjiro's mind as he watched you, his own heart swelling with admiration. He knew that Kojiro's fiery spirit was one that could never truly be extinguished, not even in his current comatose state. As the group disparted, Tanjiro lingered, his eyes flickering to the butterfly estate, where Kojiro laid unconscious inside. He vowed to get stronger, to train even harder, so that Nezuko could be human again and ensure humanity's safety. With his heart set ablaze, he thanked you, his eyes burning with determination, before running off to train some more. These training sessions were far from over, and every moment counted. You watched him leave, a proud smile tugging on your lips. The boy had come a long way since the first day at the corpse, and you knew Kojiro would be proud. But as his form disappeared in the distance, your smile faded. You slowly glanced down at your baby boy, sleeping peacefully in your arms. Your eyes lingered on his innocent face, your heart tightening with love and fierce protection. But that burned as hot as the flames of your husband's breath. The riddle game was just a facade, a cleverly disguised way to keep you cool while the storm inside you brewed. You haven't forgotten, and your desire for vengeance continued to intensify. Perhaps it's time to do some training of my own, you pondered.